Dickens cared deeply about the social issues of the time. He wanted to effect change through his writing. We will see this theme throughout this book as well. Just a brief technical background of the book. The book was written in weekly installments in a magazine and was immensely popular. You will notice how almost every chapter ends in a cliffhanger or a very significant scene. When I say it was immensely popular, I mean that people would line up to receive a copy. Kind of like the Harry Potter series of our time. Remember the hype and fame of those books. You kind of dial it down a bit and make it in the times of the Victorian era. So, very, very popular book. So, it is set in the aftermath. Well, actually, Dickens actually grew up in the aftermath of the French Revolution and kind of what would be Napoleon's mark on France and Europe. And he was actually very concerned with the English nobility's attitude towards the lower class. It was increasingly becoming similar to the French attitude before the French Revolution, or so he thought. So, this book was not only a way of entertainment for the people, but it also served as a warning for what could happen if the English nobility did not take care of what they did. So keep this point in mind. This is key to understanding the events that will unfold in the novel. Well, not so much the events, but explains why Dickens wrote this book and why it is important that the characters act the way they did. And so here's the last piece of information I would like to leave with you with. And it's a quick timeline of the French Revolution. I actually don't know how many of you actually know about this time period, but it's important to kind of know it before you go in. The book is going to talk about it, and actually we're going to live it through the eyes of the French people involved. But unless you know a little bit about it, you're going to get really lost in the middle. So here it is very, 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 very briefly. As you can see, it's a very brief timeline. Many other events happen in the middle, but they're not as important. So, well, not so much they're not important as they're not necessary for us reading this novel. And those, even some of the points here are not necessary to knowing the novel, but it's here for your convenience. And it's interesting. So, I feel like it will help you understand the motivations of the French people in the novel. The important part in all of this is that you should know what the first and second bullet point are talking about. Now, as most of you should know, the French helped the Americans fight against the British for independence. And as some of you may know, most of the ideals we hold dear in America, such as freedom of speech, the checks and balances system, etc., come from the Enlightenment. And more importantly, from French philosophers, which is, I guess, French philosophers, such as Voltaire and Montesquieu. If you all are good, maybe Ashley will talk about Candide during the month of January. So maybe you'll get a taste of that. But anyways, the point is remember the fact that most of the ideals the Americans fought for in their war for independence came from this period of enlightenment. Now, think about this situation for a second. Here you are, Frenchmen, come miles and miles away from your home. You come to America, and you're fighting basically another man's war because your country told you to. Now you sit here and you think about what you're doing, and you think about why the Americans are fighting. And you know, you furrow your brow a bit because you think about your situation at home, and you think about what you're doing here and who you're fighting for. Okay. Now you go back to France and you see that nothing has changed. The nobility still treats you badly, etc., etc. And now you get angry. You just fought a war miles and miles away in another country. And this country believed in French ideals. But here you are, a Frenchman, and nobody in France is willing to accept the ideals laid out by your fellow countrymen. And so you can see that this is already fueling the anger that's going to come later on in the French Revolution. You were outraged. Add to this a financial crisis, lazy and cruel nobles, and a famine, and you have a recipe for disaster. So all these factors, and many, many more, France was in a mess before and after this revolution, so many things led to their downfall, but you had a big disaster on your hands, and Dickens saw England moving towards this. Anyways, you're going to see a lot of this in this book, especially through the characters who live in France. Dickens is going to lay out all of this entirely for the reader to judge. At the beginning, you are going to want to commit to one side, such as the French side, and you're going to feel for them because things aren't good with them, especially with how the nobles treat them. And you're going to want to call them the victim. But look at the bullet point marked Reign of Terror. You see the revolution's bloodiest moments during the Reign of Terror, where 20,000 to 40,000 people are killed within that 1 year. Just executions day after day after day. And so it becomes very hard to define who the actual victim is. And this is kind of what Dickens is trying to warn the English about in this book. And there's many other things he wants to talk about too, so you can already see that this book is going to be very complicated, very intricate, so you guys all have to bear this in mind and keep up with the reading. If you have any questions, you let me know, or you let Ashley know, but it is important to keep up with this because this guy, Dickens is a master at work here. He is amazing in how he puts all these things together. And, we're going to talk about themes and motifs that run throughout this novel and how beautifully he lays it all out. So,